Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Wendy Sachs, and I am hosting you today on our series, Plant Powered Metro New York series, Cooking with Chef Carole, which is being presented by Plant Powered Metro New York. Sorry, a little off guard to this morning, but today. And we're being co-sponsored by the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan, which is actually where Carole and I used to do live cooking sessions. Anyway, special welcome to the members of the JCC, to our own members, to new people, and yeah, we're very happy that you're here. Plant Powered Metro New York empowers people to achieve better health and overcome chronic disease through a whole food, plant-based approach to nutrition. We offer evidence-based education, resources, and a grassroots network to support and create community and inspire change. Together, as leaders, organizers, and educators, we raise the awareness about the dramatic health benefits of whole food plant-based eating, empower individuals to make their own lifestyle adjustments, and lead projects that spark changes in food policy, practice, and food culture, at least here in America. Couple of announcements. So it's October, it's autumn. We're seeing the changes in the trees here, at least on the East Coast. And Carole, I think, is saying there's snow in the mountains now in Taos, New Mexico. Here, there's still plenty of greens and tomatoes. Well, not so much tomatoes, but there are plenty of greens in the markets. But you're seeing more apples and pears and squashes and onions and peppers. Peppers seemed all over the market this morning. As always, we encourage you to buy locally and to eat organic. And if you can, even better, find a regenerative farm in your area and see if you can get your vegetables from the regenerative farmers. For those who are interested, actually, there's a whole regenerative farm movement that's starting to happen, and we kind of encourage you to get behind that if you can. But in the meantime, Plant Powered Metro New York has its own array of autumn offerings. We encourage you to go to the website where you can find all the events. But today I'm just going to focus on a couple of in-person ones and a couple of online ones. Tomorrow night in person is a plant-powered potluck in downtown Brooklyn. And also on October 26th, we have our Shop with a Doc series. So you can go down to the Union Square Market and shop with a doctor and get all kinds of hands-on guidance on fruits and vegetables and why they're so important for metabolic health and all kinds of health-related issues. There are two events I really want to highlight. One is for the online community. We have a fantastic series called Savoring Health, Smart Eating Strategies for Men. And there are two more sessions left in this three-part series. One is October 26th. It's Eastern time from 11:30 till 1. And this one is called Better in the Bedroom, how food can improve sexual wellness. And the recipes, because it's also a cooking demo, the recipes they'll be doing are black bean burgers and tomato, cucumber, and basil salad and Snicker bites and cauliflower wings. So I'm saying all that just to tantalize your appetite for a while, and I'm sure the subject matter will be tantalizing as well. And then November 2nd, we have Gauging Blood Pressure, how food can improve your blood pressure numbers. And that too will be a cooking demo with tofu scramble and broccoli salad, tofu mayo, and a chocolate mousse. Anyway, this series is not to be missed. The men hosting it are not only teaching skills, but they will be speaking from their own personal experience about their own health reversals, and highly recommend attending online. And then in November, we have a focus not just on food, but also on fitness. So November 1st, in person in New York, is Walking the High Line with the Olympic medalist Dottie Bausch. And we'll be learning about her foundation called Switch for Good, which helps people all over the world with performing better and eating healthier on a plant-based diet and going dairy-free. So that should be great. And then Definitely want to highlight a fundraising lecture and dinner with the legendary Dr. Michael Clapper. This will be in person in New York City. This is a fundraiser to help Dr. Clapper's work in medical schools. He's got an organization called Moving Medicine Forward, and it'll also support Plant Powered Metro as we plan next year and the following year. We're really trying to scale our offerings in the next couple of years. So the fundraising events right now are really, really crucial. And if you're anywhere in the New York area, not only for that lecture, but please join us for the fundraising dinner with Dr. Clapper. So, one more quick event worth mentioning is an online series about metabolic health called Know Your Numbers. And in this series, you will learn to decipher what all the numbers are when your doctor sends you for blood tests. Okay, enough of the announcements. I'm eager to introduce and welcome Carole. Couple of logistics. Please let us know where you're from in the chat. If you've got questions, please put them in the chat. Carole usually allows time during the demo, and if not, we often save a few minutes at the end to answer as many questions as we can. And then if you're enjoying this presentation, please like us on Facebook or YouTube or even LinkedIn if you're watching from there. So without any more delay, Carole, what's on the menu today? I know you
Oh
have.
my God, Wendy, all those things I could comment on, but I won't. But how great is it? Food in the bedroom and men's health. I'm so enticing. Thank you for sharing the menu and so many great things that you talked about. Knowing your numbers. I mean, how often do we get all those numbers after our blood test and then say, I go online sometimes, what is that? What does that mean? You know, so that's going to be informative. So very exciting. I wish I was there in New York, but I'm here in New Mexico, as you mentioned. We've been starting to get very cold here already. It's not even the end of October, but it's time for the snow to start. So we have had rain and cold, and all I can think about is eating warm food. The garden is still happening. I have to admit, Wendy mentioned tomatoes, and then she double backed and said, well, not so many tomatoes, but I must have at least 50 tomatoes on the vine outside. And until it gets freezing, I'm not bringing them inside because they are still ripening. So the garden is still a little bit happening, and that always makes me excited, even though I need to turn back inside and know that everything has to come mostly from the store these next, winter and until the spring months. So we're gonna make yummy food. It's we have an Indian themed meal today. It's probably one of my very favorite foods for sure. I've had spent a lot of time practicing Indian food long before I was a vegan. I was a vegetarian for a long time, and it's always been my favorite food. But it's very special now because when you know how to make Indian food, one, you don't have to go out for it, and two, it is a food that is laden in grease, a lot of it. It has a lot of ghee, which is another word for clarified butter, and has a lot of oil. So if you can start to teach yourself some Indian recipes to make at home, I just think you'll be better feeling about eating healthier Indian food. And there's vegan Risha, which I just like to mention because she's Wendy and I's one of our favorite authors who makes literally vegan food, and she's online. She has several books, so that's always worth looking into. This particular recipe, so we're making three things today. We're making Aloo Gobi Burgers, which is a recipe by a woman named Stephanie Jenkins, and she wrote it for Dr. Furman's website. And we're gonna pretty much follow it to a T. I have a few exceptions, but I wrote it up just as it is on the website. And then they suggest that you make cilantro mango sauce for these burgers. I think you can make anything, and because I'm in tomato land at the moment and having so much tomatoes, we're gonna make a very fast tomato chutney, which is similar kind of to a salsa, but chutney has a salty and a, well, not a salty, but a savory and a sweet. And so we're going to make a quick chutney instead, but the mango sauce is provided in the recipe. And then we're really going to leave a little bit of time to make the naan, because that's kind of important to me to show you how to make this bread. You have to be a little bit adventurous to start playing around with yeast, but I think it's a great place to start because it's a flat bread and it's super simple once you kind of have the know-how, the basic know-how. So we're going to get started, and the burgers are going to be first. And what we need to do, there's several things that we need to do first, but let's just get the onions going because that's not the first thing to do, but I want to get them going while I'm talking to you. So I have a pan on the burner here, and it's already been warming up, and I'm going to saute the onions for a few minutes. Now, we've talked about this a lot, so I won't go on and on about it, but we're water or using broth to saute. We have no oil, and I'm just putting a little bit in there, and I'm going to need to get it just a utensil. I'll just use this for now, this little spatula, because it's close by. And we're just cooking those over medium heat, and we're going to have them translucent, and then we're going to start to add the spices. But let's talk about other things that we've had to do in advance. Okay, so the first thing we had to do was we had to bake, or you could boil if you want, but you just want to cook 2 potatoes. And the potatoes that I used two. The recipe says you might need 2 or 3 depending on the size. Ultimately, you need 1 cup of potatoes. My 2 potatoes gave me a cup and a half, and I baked them, I peeled them, and then I just cut them up into small dice. So I have a cup and a half of potatoes. We really only need a cup, but I've kept this potato just so you see I used 3 baked potatoes. I baked 3, but only used 2. And my potatoes were about mediums, what I would call a medium Yukon Gold potato. Okay. Then the other thing that we need to do in advance is we need to grind some cashew nuts, and just the raw unsalted cashew nuts, and we need a half a cup. Now this adds a lot of flavor to the recipe, the cashew nuts, and it is kind of a typical thing that does go into Aloo Gobi meals. Now, we don't always have burgers for the Aloo Gobi. Often it is a very simple Indian dish, which is really made up of a sauce and cauliflower and potatoes. That's really what it is. Usually, like what would be an equivalent looking like a stew. Very simple, but we're making burgers. So we need a half a cup of ground cashew nuts, and the recipe just says you could do it in a food processor or you could do it in a coffee grinder, but you just need to grind them so that they're almost flour-like. Okay, flour meaning baking flour. Very powdery is what you're looking for. I'm going to put this up so it begins to saute. The other thing we need to do is we've got the onions chopped. We're also going to need to have 1 tablespoon of minced fresh ginger. And we need garlic as well. We need 2 cloves of garlic. And I want to tell you, we needed a lot of garlic today, and I might use ginger in another place or later on for our dressing this week. So what I did was when I need a lot of these things, rather than chop it, I just took like 8 cloves of garlic, and I peeled the paper and I put them in the food processor, and I got nearly not even probably a third to a half a cup. And if I don't use this all today, I'm just going to cover it and put it in the fridge, and it can be used anytime during the week. I also did the same thing with the ginger. So we're using fresh ginger that looks like a root, right? And we've talked about how to peel it. You could either peel it with a peeler or the back of a spoon. A spoon can often take off. And sometimes I'm very lazy and I don't even bother to peel it. And I actually think as long as it's clean and there's no dirt in the crevices of the root, then I actually think it's just fine to eat the skin. And when I do peel it, I always save those peels and use it in some hot water with a little lemon and make like a lemon ginger tea. So, you know, if you are used to listening to me, I'm all the time trying to save little things to make other things. We might as well get the mileage out of everything we buy. And so I have so I have garlic and ginger, and we're just going to put those here because the onions are starting to cook and sizzle, and we're going to get our spices ready. And let's talk about the spices that we need. So we're going to need 1 big tablespoon of fresh ginger. So that's why I went ahead and ground it up ahead of time. That is going to be our 1 tablespoon. We're just going to put that in the pan right now. So with Indian food, you always want to make the spices toasted and blend them in with your onions. Now, normally this is when you have a lot of oil in the pan, but we're not using any oil. We're using water or broth. So we put 1 tablespoon of ginger in, and then we need 2 cloves of garlic. Now, I'm just going to assume that every clove of garlic is about a teaspoon. So I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of garlic. Okay. Now, we'll need that garlic later on for other things, so we'll just keep it close by and we'll keep the teaspoon there. Okay, so we can start to mix this right now, the ginger and the garlic all together. That's cooking. The onions are not sticking to the pan. I don't have a very big pan here. I'm using like a 7 or 8 inch it's not a non-stick, it's a ceramic pan. Often people ask me what kind of pan I like, and I like this brand called Ozeri, Ozeri, and it's like my go-to pan. I love it so much. Now let's talk about our spices that we're going to put. Okay, and I'm going to read them right from the recipe. And there is something in the recipe that I did want to mention. The recipe actually says that we're going to saute our onions in apple juice, which I kind of totally forgot that we were supposed to do. I brought it out. I'm so used to doing sauteing in water or broth. And I think that they have you do this only to add a little bit, a touch of sweetness. Now, you'll say, what is in this bag? I literally had this bag for almost a year and a half, or maybe a year. It's just a can of apple juice concentrate, literally, and it's in a Ziploc bag. You see the lid I have here, and it's frozen. And usually when I need to have it, I literally just scoop out a scoop, just 1 scoop. Here it says you needed 2 tablespoons of juice or water. I'll put just the 1 tablespoon, just because I don't want to add too much sweetness. And I'm going to put this right back in the freezer, exactly how it stays in there, in the Ziploc bag. And I'm just going to keep it in there. And I use that for other things too sometimes. So it's just good to have that frozen juice, apple juice concentrate. But obviously, if you don't have it, you're just going to use water or broth, okay? So this is getting sauteed. It's looking quite delicious already. And let's talk about, so we did our onion and we did our ginger and we did our garlic. And now we need 1 tablespoon of mild curry powder. So 1 tablespoon is going to go right in there. And then I've measured out the other spices, but let's just talk about what they are. I have a half a teaspoon of cardamom, a half a teaspoon of turmeric, and and 1 teaspoon of coriander. And we've talked a little bit about coriander before. Coriander is usually a seed, but we want it to be a powder. And the way that I don't have a lot of room for lots and lots of jars, so I actually buy the coriander seed, and then I grind it up in the just a little bit of it. I grind it up in the coffee grinder, and then I put it in a little plastic bag, and that's the ground part, and the whole part is here at the bottom. They're like little tiny balls, little seeds, and I just keep it together. So that way, if ever I need a recipe that needs whole coriander, I have it. And then I also have just enough ground to use. So now that spice is going in. So cardamom, turmeric, and coriander. And that's going to go in there. And we're going to now just get this mixed all in and oh, you can already smell how delicious it's going to be already. Just that, those things make it smell delicious. Just the turmeric, the coriander, the cardamom, and it smells heavenly. It's not sticking. I want it just to cook a little more. And then what we're going to also add is Dr. Furman actually in this recipe makes a spice. I want to call it a seasoning. It's called a seasoning. And I learned about the seasoning from Wendy, actually. I would have never had this in my cabinet. And I'm going to make an assumption that none of you have it in your cabinet. Zero. But if you do, it is recommended that you use 2 teaspoons of this when we're mixing the whole thing together. But we are going to try to use, we're going to omit this at the moment and see if we can do a replacement. And he has, in the recipe, it says 2 teaspoons of veggie zest. And the veggie zest has a million things in the ingredients. And I'm just going to read you a few, but there's literally like 25 ingredients. And it's got carrot and broccoli and spinach and onions and basil and flax and mushrooms and parsley and celery and thyme. And that's so many things in this powder. So if you have that, use that. But if most of you will not have that. It also says that if you don't have that, you could use another no salt seasoning blend. And I know Mrs. Dash makes a no salt blend, but we're going to try to make up some of that flavor if we need to. Once we're mixing it, we'll taste it and we'll see if we need to add any other spices just to bring up the flavor. It might be just perfect without any of that. So we'll see. And then it also calls for pepper, which I totally brought over. That's over here. And I do have to get one thing out of the cabinet that I totally forgot. Just 1 second here. Don't usually forget things. Oh, and it's not in the cabinet, so that's why I can't find it. It's actually already in the refrigerator. And I forgot that we need tomato paste actually. And I talked about this too many times. I like this Bio Nature tomato paste. It actually is no salt added. And this is a brand new jar. And I just keep it in the refrigerator. I literally get it out from the groceries and it just goes right into the refrigerator. Now, if you think you're not going to use all the tomato paste in the coming week, 2 weeks or so, I suggest that you take tablespoon out at a time, wrap it in a little foil, and then make little foil packages, and then put those packages into the freezer. Because the tomato paste, that way it doesn't spoil in your refrigerator, and it's nothing but frustration when you have spoiled things that you've actually invested in. So if you think you're not going to use it, I actually use the tomato paste in a number of things, and I don't find it spoiling so fast for me. But if you're one of those people that just isn't cooking a lot and isn't using the tomato paste, I totally can see that it'd be better for you to take some out and make the little packages. So that's that. What else are we going to do now? So we got to get things going. So this is pretty cooked, so I'm going to turn off the burner for now. Okay, and what we're going to do is from this point forward, I kind of just do the things. I don't know if I do it in the order that they recommend, but we're going to, I want to take a little bit of water because it's not so much sticking, but some of those spices, I just want to loosen up. Okay, so everything looks really great here. So we will read. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the food processor and we're going to combine a can of chickpeas with this spicy mixture that we've just made. And I've already drained the chickpeas. I'm using a can of chickpeas, which I seldom do, but once in a while for quickness, I definitely keep a bunch of cans, various brands I use. But you want to make sure when you're bringing home the beans that you want the label to say no salt added, because there's a lot of salt in the canned beans, and if you're making your fresh beans you can just make the beans without the salt added. But this is West Bray, in case anybody's wondering. It's a little bit more of an expensive brand of chickpea. If you have a big chain grocery store like a Kroger's or a Smith's or a Safeway by you, definitely buy their brands because they make a lot of no salt beans, which is really great. So I have the food processor here in the back just so it wouldn't be in the way. So I'm just going to step away a little bit, and we're going to put our chickpeas in the food processor right here. We're just going to add those. Okay, and then we're going to add this mixture, and we're just going to blend just really quickly. And again, I'm gonna add, there's a little tiny bit of spices. I just want you to see what the pan looks like. You can see I'm just gonna actually use a little tiny bit of the water, and that will loosen up. And I'm actually gonna I don't want anything left in the pan, really. I don't. I want it to be pretty clean, actually, because we could probably make our chutney in this without even washing it out. Okay, so we've now adding, we're gonna add a little bit of, they say this is when you add the veggie zest. You're gonna add some parsley. I like to add that by hand. So what I do is I process this, and then you'll see how it goes. So I'm just going to process this just a little, not a lot. Okay, just till it's blended, and it kind of makes a nice, it's a little chunky. Okay, I left a few of, I didn't, I pulsed it just a few times, and it's nice and sticky. Okay, and that's going to be, that is the onion mixture with the onions and spices. Okay, we didn't add our black pepper yet. And let me just get this here into the, and we have to add the rest of the things. So I have potatoes. I told you we only need a cup, but I ended up with a cup and a half. So I'm going to use them all because I don't want them to go to waste. Cauliflower. We need to have a cup and a half of cauliflower. And I used a half a cauliflower for this recipe. It really depends on the size cauliflower. Sometimes they're very large, sometimes they're very small, but you need a cup and a half. And all I did was steam it. You just want to get it cooked. And what does that mean? I just put a little boiling water and I steamed it till it was done. And then I chopped it up into little pieces, okay, right after I cooked it. I cooked it while the florets were big. It doesn't matter, but I'm putting in a cup and a half, okay? A cup and a half is going into there. And let's just make sure that we're cleaning up as we go because we do need the space later for our naan. Let's just put that there. Now, we also need to add our half a cup of cashew flour, okay? And we need to add, so I'm going to go back to this to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. We need to add 3 tablespoons of the tomato paste. Now, if you were just making aloo gobi, just not as a burger, but you were making it as a dish, like to serve as like a stew, you would definitely be using the tomato paste too. These are all very common things. And I'm just taking 3 tablespoons, you can see. And then this will go right back in the fridge, the bottle. And that's going to go like that. That's perfect. Okay, we're going to put that. So and then we're going to give it a few twists of black pepper. It says to have about 1/8 of a teaspoon, but I'm just going to give it a few twists. I like the fresh black pepper. And then in this recipe, it calls for 2 tablespoons of fresh parsley. That is really totally up to you. I have the parsley chopped already, and we can use the table. I'm just gonna put like 2 tablespoons. I'm not even gonna measure it. I'm just gonna put that in there. You could use cilantro too. Okay, some of you don't like cilantro, I know, and maybe are allergic or just don't like it in general. So maybe that's why they are using parsley in this dish. But most often you would definitely be using cilantro. But I'm following the recipe as close as possible. Now the only thing that we haven't added is that veggie zest. But let's just get this starting to mix, okay? So it's the onion and the spices that are going to really hold this burger together. And we will taste it and see if anything needs to be added. Now, if you were making the aloo gobi, it would be very common to put a serrano or a jalapeno or something spicy into your sauce. The This recipe does not have anything like that. Um, and let's just taste it, because if the flavor is not there because I haven't used the veggie zest or I haven't used a no salt, we're going to add some, I don't know, probably a little bit of cumin, maybe, possibly a few chili flakes would be delicious. That certainly, but let's just taste. But this is what this is looking like. It's very sticky and it's going to be perfectly good and ready for us to make our burgers. So let's just move this over. Now I'm bringing in a sheet pan that's lined with parchment paper. There's almost nothing I ever put in the oven on a sheet pan without using parchment. I like the brown paper, but this is white, as you can see. Someone gave me a gigantic roll from Costco, so I've been trying to use that up. So that's why the thing is white. So let's just use this spoon right here just to give it a taste to see what the situation is here. It's actually quite delicious. It's honestly delicious. And I'm not kidding you. You don't need to add anything else. Again, I think the veggie zest would make it a different little bit of flavor. I'm going to add I have a tiny bit. My very good friend just bought me Kashmir red chili powder, which I've been trying to use because it's such a treat. It comes from my very favorite place in New York, Cola Stands. Wendy knows about Cola Stands. Almost every article in the New York Times if it has a weird spice, you have to go to Cola Stands to actually get it. It's a place on Lexington and 28th, between 28th and 29th. And it started out as an Indian market in the 1940s and became a world market. And it has a million, and I'm not kidding you, a million spices and everything. It has dried goods. It has everything that you could ever imagine and dream of for your kitchen pantry. Wendy, do you love it as much as I love it? I
I
think you do.
love I never can say the name Kaligistans, but my favorite was honestly, Carol, going with you because you were far more familiar with all the different spices from all over the world.
Oh
But
my
I
God.
do want to add that one of the advantages, and I'm not suggesting you put it in just because, but one of the advantages of the veggie zest is that it has a lot of spices and herbs that are also anti-inflammatory. So I don't remember the list. I know that you have it in the recipes, Carol, of everything that's in there. I think you said there's 25 different ingredients.
I'm guessing because I didn't count, but it's a paragraph, Wendy.
It's a paragraph. I remember you saying so. Anyway, that's one of the advantages. It's one of the advantages of why, I mean, it's one of the reasons Dr. Furman uses it a lot, because herbs and spices in general can be very anti-inflammatory and helpful for many health conditions. Anyway, just throwing that in there. I also put the
Packed with
link.
his favorite thing, G bombs.
Yes,
It's packed
exactly.
with his very favorite. I'm just reading the label again, and it says here. It says this extraordinary product tastes great naturally and is packed with the G bombs. And
Right.
so it does, it is just like what Wendy says, but it's something to just, if you're interested in getting it, you can buy it, but I don't want it to be prohibitive because
Right.
I know most people don't have it. The way that I started using it was because Wendy had it in her cabinet, and we used to cook a lot together when I lived in New York, and we lived just blocks apart. So it's something that I have. It has a lot of Italian flavor to it, so I'm not sure quite why it needs to go into the Indian food, but it does add a different dimension to it.
Correct. Yeah.
So, but I do think, honestly, that it's so delicious without. Now, if somebody is having any heart issues, I just want to address this. They might want to stay away from the half a cup of cashews. And you could easily, I think, substitute the cashews. Bonzo, many of you know that they make pasta, chickpea pasta, but they also make ground dried chickpeas, and I have found them at Whole Foods, and they're just ground dried chickpeas, and I think that would be a fantastic substitute if you need to, if you're having a heart healthy meal and you need to stay away for any reason, or you're really watching your saturated fats and you don't want to use a half a cup of cashews. I think that would be a perfect substitution, just to keep in mind. Now, we have made so many burgers on these demos, but I just want to, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because I want to leave time for the naan and the chutney. But my way of making burgers, you can just wet your hands and shape them, right, to any size you want. But I find that I'm often serving company. I actually work in a kitchen where we have to make everything look the same and weigh the same. So I like this little tip of using any kind of lid. You could use a peanut butter jar lid, any kind of tahini lid, any lid whatsoever. This is happens to be a plastic lid that goes on my ball jars, my quart ball jars for the wide mouth. And I find it to be just perfect. You want to get a little piece of plastic. I don't have any saran wrap, but I had a plastic bag, so I just tore it open or just used the scissors. And you want to put that in there. Now, you want to definitely get your hands wet if you're ending up touching all this. But basically, what you're going to do is you're going to pat in your filling mixture into this lid. And that way they become all even. And it's going to be like that, right? And we'll try to do a bunch of these very fast without making a mess. I can see I'm already. And you want to just, I use the leftover to kind of pat it all in. And then you want your hands a little damp, right? And then this gets turned out and it goes right onto parchment paper, okay? So I don't think I'm going to make them all in front of you right at this moment. I do have the oven on 350 degrees preheated. You want to always preheat your oven before you put anything into the oven. Again, I'm just kind of reshaping these a little bit so that they all start to look. And we're going to cook these in the oven. They might not be done when our demo is done, but they need about 30 to 40 minutes. And we're going to flip them halfway through. So after they've been in for the oven about 15 or 20 minutes, we're just going to flip them over. And if you find for some reason that they're sticking, they won't stick once they start to get brown. Okay. So you might be trying to flip something a little bit early, right? But you just want to, again, I would love to get all these done. Let's just see if we can do it. Wendy, this would be a perfect time if anybody had any questions about the Aloo Gobi burgers, because while I would love just to get them all done so that I'm not having to do it after the demo.
Yes, the one question that came up, it was actually answered, but by another participant, is can you freeze garlic and can you freeze ginger? And I'll just ask more as a friend, do you have a preference in terms of how you freeze it? If you freeze it in chunks and then do the food processor or get it all food processed before you freeze it. I definitely freeze ginger. I've just never frozen garlic.
I've never, honestly, you could definitely freeze both, right? Like I'm sure the participant who answered said yes, of course you can do that. But I don't know, I go through it so fast. I always think that if you put away things into the freezer how you're going to use them, okay? So you're probably only going to use a couple tablespoon, like a tablespoon or two of ginger. So I would probably do it, freeze it the same way that I just told you to do the tomato paste, right? Which was just put it in little tiny foil packets. You could also put it into a freezer tray and freeze it into little cubes. But you want to, whatever you freeze, you want to have it in the proportion that you're going to want to use, so that you're not taking out more than you actually need.
Right.
So that's what I would do. That's why I freeze the tomato paste. If I think I'm not going to use the tomato paste, I would definitely put it into 1 tablespoons, because that's often what you need for a recipe, is anywhere from 1 tablespoon to maybe 4 tablespoons, right? So you would take out 4 packs, but that's how I would do
I think I'm a little lazier than you are. I do at least do.
it.
I put the whole thing in the grinder. You know, I grind it all up, and then in one chunk, I'll put it in a sustainable plastic. It's not plastic. It's I don't can't think of it. But anyway, I put in one of those bags that are sustainable and reusable, and put that in the freezer. The word's escaping me what it's made out of, but it's reusable. And I then just take out the tablespoon I might need from the, just like you would a jar. I'll take that,
Right.
put it in the freezer.
Understood.
But I will also say for those of you, and Carol, I don't know if you found this, but when I've pre-made the garlic and put it in the refrigerator,
Mhm.
unless I have a really tight, a jar with a really tight lid, it
Mhm.
does get quite pungent in the refrigerator. Like there's
Yes, it
an
does get a
odor.
little stronger, and but I
It,
find that I make dressing all the time, or
me
I don't
too.
know, like for me, like having a bunch of garlic already processed that
Yeah,
I didn't have to chop up myself. Um, like it's a pretty awesome thing just to have in the refrigerator,
I
whether you
agree.
keep it in the freezer or keep it, I don't know. I just think that it's quite good. Now, usually I rinse this plastic bag because I am too a saver of things, and I just let it air dry so that I have it for the next time, for the next whatever it is that I'm doing, whatever burger I have. And then that lid, and look, we made them all just while we were talking. So
It's
I made
super,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I made 7, and it's
super.
going right into the oven. And we'll try to watch the time.
And
It's
Professor Paley, I'm wondering, I think that's Laurel, my friend Laurel, thank you for the word silicon, those little silicon
Oh, that's the word
tender
you were
things.
wanting,
Yes,
silicone.
sorry. It's a spacey day here in New York City. Anyway,
Sometimes
glad
one
that you're
forgets the words that they need, Wendy. It's
here.
okay. Silicone, there's so many different things out there now to put away in the freezer, you know? And I think I mentioned the last time those super cubers
Yep,
that you could put soup away. I don't own any of those. Do you own them, Wendy?
I don't, but I keep thinking about getting them myself.
I do think about every time thinking, do I need that? Maybe I do. I'm not sure. But I guess I'm a single person. So when I cook, I don't know. I don't freeze a lot of things. I have been freezing a lot of things that are precious to me, like the plums I've been getting from people, apricots, the chili peppers, all things that I want to have in the winter here, or in the spring before next summer. So I have been using my freezer a lot, but I don't tend to put away pots of soup, or I don't know. But certainly, if you're such a busy person, it's something that you should be in a habit of doing for sure. So we are ready to move on to the next quick thing, and I'm kind of running on time, which is amazing. And we're going to get this pan. And remember, I told you we were going to cook in this pan that's not washed. We're definitely doing that. That is like a typical Carol thing. If we're almost using the same things, why bother? Why bother to wash something out if it's already going to have a lot of those same ingredients? So, as I mentioned earlier, This cilantro mango sauce is delicious that comes with the recipe, but I am in abundance of tomatoes. So I just threw together a tomato chutney, and these are rough guides for you, okay? Because you can really, a chutney is so delicious because it's savory and sweet at the same time. And I think it's really nice on these Aloo Gobi burgers. And what I'm going to use for this is we need a sweetener, and I have 2 medjool dates that have just been soaking in water. And I want you to know that this water is actually very, very delicious. And we could saute some onions to make this chutney, but there are no onions in this chutney. But this is a recipe that you can really ad lib on and make it to your liking. I put it together for quickness, and I didn't want to chop any onions when I was putting this together. But the one thing that I did do is the tomatoes. You want to have 4 or 5 tomatoes. I actually have 5 tomatoes because I have, they're on the smaller size of a tomato. And if you've never taken the skin off the tomato, that is something for this recipe you really want to do, because it's not that the skin is bad, but the skin often comes off and then it ends up curling all like a little curl, like a little knot kind of, and then you really kind of don't enjoy chewing on that. It's like it's okay to leave it, but in this recipe I actually take the time. I didn't take the time to chop onions, but I took the time to peel the onions. And I tell you how to do that. And what you want to do is you want to take your tomato that has the skin on it, and you take it, and so that it's upside down, and you take a serrated knife, and you just make an X at the bottom. Okay, an X at the bottom of each tomato. And then you throw the tomatoes in some boiling water, and you keep them in the boiling water for 30 to 60 seconds at the most. And you will see that where you made that X, that the skin is starting to unwrap, come off. Okay, and then what you want to immediately do is stop the cooking. And the way to stop the cooking when you blanch something really quickly like that is to put it in an ice bath. So you would have a bowl with some ice, and you would just immediately throw the tomatoes from the boiling water right into the ice bath. It shocks them and it cools it off. So I did that process this morning, and I'm just going to, while I'm talking to you, and I'm going to get this burner on. Okay, and I'm just going to start cutting these tomatoes. Now I have the tops here. Now you have to imagine that I'm a little bit salivating. You can't see this really close up, but these tomatoes have just been picked this morning, and they're so bright red and so delicious that they're naturally sweet on their own, because they literally haven't had any transportation. They have not gone across the country. They have not had to be stocked in the grocery store. They have just come right from my vine, and that makes them the most delicious. Now I'm saving these little tops. What am I going to save them for? I'm going to put those little tops in my freezer bag that lives in the freezer for the stock that I'll eventually make at some point. I'm not going to throw away these little tops. And and here's a tomato that has a little bit of not so good part in it. So I'm just cutting that away. Now the juice is pretty much, eking out. It's going to, if you don't have a big cutting board, sometimes it starts to go all over the place, which is something you really don't want. I have a little bit of skin left here, so that is going to go. Now, I'm not even going to bother to drain these. If you were making a other kind of sauce, maybe you'd want to send all the liquid through a drainer. But I'm going to actually just put these tomatoes, and I left them kind of chunky, and I want them chunky, and I don't want to have to cook this very long. So those tomatoes are going to be there like that. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put away these tomatoes just for a minute, And we're just going to put the bay leaves. I have 3 little bay leaves. I suggested that you use one. This is, again, going to go right into the place of saving for, and I'm just going to move this for a minute. We're just going to move this over here. And we're going to get another cutting board. And I suggested that you use some kind of pepper for some chunkiness to add to the tomatoes. Now, this is a what they call an Anaheim pepper. It's pretty readily available in most places. It does have seeds. It's, I want to say that it's mild. It's not too spicy. It's not like a jalapeno or a serrano. And we're just going to cut this up. This I'm not really necessarily going to save for any kind of stock, but I'm definitely going to save it for the compost. So I'm just taking out the seeds. On Anaheim, I don't worry about the hotness. Like I would never do this with my hands and my fingers. If it was a jalapeno, I don't bother. I would always protect my hands with some gloves or put a plastic on my hands or scoop out the seeds. I would scoop them out with a teaspoon or a tablespoon. But like I said, the Anaheim is a pretty mild pepper. And if you're wondering always what your pepper tastes like, it is very good. So just taste it, because this tells you if it's spicy or not. It's really good to know what you're working with in advance. This tastes almost just like a green pepper to me. Okay. And if you couldn't find an Anaheim, I would just use a green pepper. I think it adds a nice texture. And you saw that I was cutting while I was talking to you. I just cut the pepper into julienne strips, and now I'm just small dicing it. Okay, so we have that. And if you're just wondering about how much that is, let's just see. I think it's probably about, this is a 1/3 cup measure. So we have a little more than 1/3. We don't have quite, we probably have about a 1/2 cup. This is going to go immediately into the pan. And I want to get my water close by because it's already sizzling, and I'm going to add a teeny bit of water. Remember, we talked about the water. Now, and I told you this pepper is not even hot. And let me get my very favorite little spoon. I have a very favorite little tiny wooden spoon. And I'm just immediately, when I put that water in, all those little garlic and all the flavorings from the last dish when I made were in here. And it's all just moving around. And the pan looks so clean right now. You would never even know that there was anything else in there beforehand, because it's all just kind of mixed in, and that's fine. So just as we did earlier, so this, imagine you could have onions if you wanted, but I didn't use onions. We're just using the peppers. And then what we want to do is we want to start to add the spices and the sweetness. Now remember, we just used a little water just now for the sauteing. I'm going to use a little bit of the date water. I never throw this water out because it's basically sugar water, and it's made from a whole food. It's made naturally from this date. So why throw it out? I'm immediately going to add my bay leaves. I suggest you use 1 bay leaf, but I have 3 little ones, so I just am using them up. And then we want to carefully, with all this liquid, get this tomatoes into the pan without making too big of a mess. I'm just kind of directing this in here. Okay. And again, I don't want to cook this for too long. I don't want everything to break down. I don't want the tomatoes. I like them to be a little bit chunky. And we're just going to put this here for now. We might need that cutting board. Now we're going to add the spices. So the spices are a 1/2 teaspoon of cumin, a 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric, and a 1/2 teaspoon of chili powder. And we also need to get our garlic in there. And it says 1 clove of garlic. So remember I said I did all this garlic in advance. I'm just going to use about a teaspoon. That can just go in there. That could have gone in there a little earlier, but that's okay. We're just getting all that mixed. Now, whenever I need anything sweet, I always use usually a date for, you could use date paste if you have date paste just readily in your refrigerator. I just happen to have no date paste, which is very unusual. So that's why we're going to use the whole date. And I'm just going to roughly chop. I have two, but I think we only need one. But I soaked two. And this date is just going to dissolve in there. Okay, and I think I just took half of one. So this will be the other half. This is one medjool date going right into our chutney. Okay, and we're going to get our spoon. And that date is going to dissolve. You are not going to find that date. Once it starts cooking, it has been soaking for just a little while. That's why I suggest you can use the date paste if you have, because you want to have the sweetener, right? Okay, so this looks already delicious. I just want to show it to you. And of course, we have to taste it. Now, I know that it's not spicy enough for me because there's nothing spicy in there except for the cumin and the turmeric. And I'm going to just get a small spoon and we're going to lower this a little bit. I don't want it to cook so very much. And I'm going to taste it. And this is where you have to use your own taste buds in your own decision making process. Do you want it to be a little sweeter? Do you want it to be a little hotter? Mmm, mmm, yummy, yummy, yummy. Now, I told you that I have a lot of hatch special chilies that we have here in New Mexico. And you're probably not going to find those unless you're living here or you're a person that just, you can buy actually green chilies in a can. I forget there's an organic non-GMO. I don't have the can here, otherwise I would show it to you. But there is a brand where you can buy them in the can. But I have them in the freezer. And these are medium spice. And because I know that this dish needs to have a little bit of spice to it. So it will be up to you what you put in. I suggest in the notes that you can add a little bit of serrano, a little bit of chopped jalapeno, or a little bit of poblano chili. Any of those things are okay. So I have almost what would be equivalent of almost 2 tablespoons. And I like it spicy. Okay. And if I end up making it too spicy for myself, I'm certainly going to use that extra date that I have soaking. Okay. But that is really pretty much our chutney. Just a tomato sauce that has got sweet things as well as savory things and some spices. And if you want, you could chop some cilantro. That's all up to you. I'm gonna take it off the burner and let it cool, and then I'll put it in a jar. Oh, it's yummy, yummy. It's both hot and sweet at the same time. We don't need this other date, so I'm gonna just put that aside, and we're kind of clearing the way here, which is actually good. And that is our tomato chutney. And if anyone has questions, I'm gonna take it off the burner. I'm gonna put it on. We're just gonna let it cool off before I even bother to put it away in a jar. Gonna make sure that it's in an airtight container. And that would be delicious on so many things, not just the aloo gobi. It would be delicious on any kind of baked potato. It could be delicious on soft polenta. That would be quite delicious. What other things? I don't know, just off the top of my head, those are the things I can think about right away. Does anyone have any questions?
We have some questions, and black beans always is nice with sort of a tomato pungent salt, something other than salsa. Then that looks quite yummy. So questions. You're being asked if you make your own date paste And if so, the participant who's asking, Annette actually, says that hers gets moldy after about a week. So is there anything
Ah,
you do to make sure it doesn't get moldy?
well, first of all, I make small quantities. Don't make gigantic, but I usually use like 8 ounces of dates, and I put it in a jar and put it in the fridge. And of course, I bake a lot, so I do use it. But I have had it go moldy before. I'm not gonna tell you that I haven't. So just put it in the freezer, right? It's okay. You could do the same thing like the tomato paste. Put it away in small packages, any kind of package. Wendy puts hers in a silicone, a reusable bag. You could put it away in a little package of foil, however you want to put it away, but it is fine in the freezer.
And you use 8 ounces of dates to 8 cups of boiling water?
No, no, no. Eight
I mean,
ounces, like
in
a
one,
8 ounces is
cup of
like a
boiling
half a
water?
pound, and then I use probably, it depends on the dates, Wendy, because it depends. Sometimes the medjool dates are so soft and mushy, it doesn't need a ton of water. It's probably a half a cup to 3/4 of a cup, and I just make it till it's, put the water in slowly when I'm mixing the dates with the dates. And I put it in slowly until it becomes a paste that looks right to me, you know. And sometimes when I have to, use a recipe that has maple syrup and I want to use date paste, I just add a little water and kind of make it a little more runny, so it's a sweetener, right? There's also a wonderful brand called Just Date. I don't know if I have the date. I think I do have the date syrup. Let me look in the cabinet. There's a wonderful brand that's called Just Date. Just Date. I'll just show it to you. They make this pomegranate syrup that is pomegranates and dates. And then they also make just a date syrup. So that's also something good just to have in your pantry. It comes in this nice, convenient squirt bottle, and it lasts pretty long time. And you could eat it on your morning breakfast if you're so choose. But it's a good brand, Just Date.
Super. I know we need to get to the naan bread, and
Oh,
very
dear.
quickly, can you super fast tell us the difference again between chutney and salsa?
Oh, well, salsa, I mean, they're both a sauce, but chutney really is always made up of something sweet and something salt. Something not salty but savory. Something, some spice and some sweet. That's what chutney is, and it's usually chunky. I mean, you can make plum chutney, you can make peach chutney, you can make mango chutney, you can make tomato chutney. I mean, there's endless amounts of things that you, and often it would have onions. You could put onions in this if you wanted. It would be great. But it's just, and it's usually more of a chunky kind of thing.
Got it.
So yeah, this is really great, and it will look really beautiful on the Aloo Gobi burgers.
Super.
What else? Does anybody have any questions, Wendy?
That's it. Just that it looks like someone wrote, which I agree, it looks like a delicious Sunday meal. And while you're preparing the counter for the bread, I'll just add that I have used the aloo gobis. I think I put this in the chat for to serve to guests. This is a wonderful, fun little vegan dish that a lot of people who are non-vegan seem to really enjoy as well. And I've even made it for holiday celebrations, and it's just a really, really fun, festive dish as
And
well.
also, people aren't ever expecting it, Wendy, as a burger. They're
Right.
usually expecting it in a bowl, and
Correct.
that you dip your naan or you have your basmati rice on the side and a big pile of greens. And you could also serve your burger the same way with a big thing of greens and a little bit of rice, or some naan. And Wendy and I have definitely, and I know on this demos, I have made different kinds of naan, whether it be with cauliflower, sweet potatoes, and vegan Risha has a lot of different kinds of naan recipes that I encourage all of you to look at. But today we're gonna make our naan with whole wheat flour and chickpea flour. And the reason I want to teach you this is because it's a yeasted bread, and most of you maybe don't normally have yeast in your house, or maybe you are a avid bread baker and you have yeast, but it is is something that's kind of fun to do. And I think it's always fun to do with children because there is a magical thing that happens with yeast. So I've already made the dough because the dough, it's really important that it needs to rise a little bit. So I have already made some dough, but I thought you all are going to want to see what the parts are. So I'm making more dough. I'll probably regret this at the end when I don't have you to eat maybe 20 naans or 10 naans. But I this week had made the naan at the beginning of the week. And honestly, 3 days had gone by and I had not eaten at all. And I thought, oh gosh, I've let it go. It's been in a container and it's surely just not good anymore. But honestly, it was good 3, 4 days afterwards. I just put it in the oven, warmed it up for a very few minutes, and it was perfect, as if I had just made it. So this is also probably bread that you could potentially freeze. So let's just get to it because I do want to show you the steps and time runs out quicker than anything. And we want to just get our pan close by. That is definitely. Now, maybe before we start this whole production here, it would be important just to see what's happening with the burgers. Oh, they are almost ready to be turned. It's been 15 or 20 minutes, but they're kind of soft, so I'm going to leave them. It's not going to be detrimental to them. It's okay. So let's just get everything measured and then we'll start to show you technique. So in this recipe, I've given you a lot of notes and a couple different hyperlinks in the recipe that you can actually click on because I've wanted to express the things that are important to bread making. And let me just get the recipe actually in front of me so I know what we're doing. So we need to have in this bowl, we need 1.5 cups of whole wheat flour. And I'm using what they call white whole wheat flour. And it's still whole wheat, even though it has the word white in front of it. So 1.5 cups of whole wheat flour, and then 1/2 cup of what we call chickpea flour. Chickpea flour has many names. It has, sometimes it's called garbanzo flour, sometimes it's called besan, besan, and sometimes it's even called gram flour, depending on where you're buying it. That has often to do with the name. In the Indian markets, you'll find it under gram flour or besan. Why do I put the gram flour or what we call chickpea flour in here? Because I think it makes it extra special and gives it a lot of flavor and a lot of depth. Otherwise, it just feels like it's just whole wheat or whole wheat flour, and I really like the combination of it. So we want 2 cups total of flour. So I'm doing 1.5 cups of the whole wheat flour and 1/2 cup of the chickpea flour. Then the other things that we need to have the yeast. Now, I have given you a link to the yeast, but basically what you're looking for is instant yeast, okay? This is the brand that I like very much. Instant yeast is different than regular yeast. The granules are smaller and you don't have to proof the yeast. So normally if you were using yeast as a normal active ingredient, you would have to put some sugar or sweetener, some warm water and the yeast, and you'd have to watch it proof right in front of you. I say poof, but the word really is proof. It proofs in front of you and it begins to puff up. And that tells you that the yeast is active. But the instant yeast is, it's almost, I feel it's one of those things you don't have to proof, and it acts much quicker. And I wrote the brand that I like very much, and we're allowed to just put the teaspoon that we need right into the mixture. We don't have to bother to proof it at all. So we need 1 teaspoon of instant yeast that's going right into the flour mixture. And if you end up buying a big bag or you have too much, you absolutely can put this in the freezer. I just keep mine in the fridge because I make bread pretty regularly. Now, the other thing that some of you might be surprised at is I'm going to add a little bit of salt. And we talk a lot about not using salt, but I give you a link in the recipe that talks about what salt does in a bread recipe. And I can't think of any bread that doesn't have salt. There are maybe some that do exist. It's possible that some exist for sure. I think there's an Italian bread actually that has no salt in it. But you need a little bit of salt, and we're using a quarter teaspoon of salt in this whole mixture that's going to make anywhere from 6 to 7 breads. So a little bit of salt, it helps strengthen the gluten, it also helps the browning, and it inhibits the yeast from developing too fast. The other thing that you need when you're making bread is it's very important to have a sweetener of some sort. And the sweetener usually gets mixed with the active yeast right away because it feeds the yeast. Imagine, I read somewhere online, it's like Pac-Man. It goes, it like feeds the yeast. It really is good to have a sweetener. Today, we're just going to use 1 teaspoon of maple syrup, just 1 teaspoon. Now, you could use the date paste. You could use the date syrup. Anything you want is fine as long as you use the some kind of sweetener. Okay, that is very important to activating the yeast. And the other thing that we need, and I'm just looking for what happened to my tablespoon because I think, oh, I see a clean one over there, but we'll just wash out this one because it's in my hand. We are going to add 4 tablespoons of non-dairy yogurt. And I like this brand called Forager. Forager. The lid right now reminds us, it has in big letters, it says vote on the top. I like that, reminding us to vote. I like that you buy something and it reminds you to vote. And we just need 4 tablespoons. I tend to buy these little ones because I do a little bit of baking. So we're just going to add all of this gets mixed together in one setting here. Now I used this yogurt a little bit earlier when I made the dough. And I'm just getting this mixed and showing you that. And it's going to be a little sticky. And we need to have 3/4 cup of warm water. And I forgot about the warm water. Now, if bread changes, bread is really a science. All baking is a science. All baking is a science. I want to repeat that 100 times. And where you live, the climate really matters. I live in a very dry climate right now. If you live in a humid, uh, the moisture really makes a difference. So if you're a baker, you understand these things. If you're first time baking, you're going to learn about these things and you're going to have to adjust possibly the recipe. But I have 3/4 of a cup of what is pretty, it's warm. A baby could drink it, right? It's not boiling hot. And this is going to activate the yeast. And I'm going to use 3/4 of a cup. And we're just going to get this all mixed up. Okay, that's all we're going to do. And it's going to look kind of shaggy. As soon as it starts to look shaggy, that's when I go in there with my hands. But this is all getting mixed up. And I just want to end up showing you. I try to mix as much of the flour in as possible. Okay. Again, we're eventually we're not gonna have to knead it like a normal bread. Sometimes needs 5 to 10 minutes of kneading. This just needs a little bit of kneading, not a lot. It's fairly sticky. So you're gonna need a little more flour for your counter. Let's just get rid of that. I actually have a bag. I treasure this flour. My friend Jim gave me fresh ground. We ground this whole wheat ourselves. And I kind of I don't know why I'm using it this moment, but I just grabbed it. And it's a beautiful whole wheat flour that he buys in a big 50-pound bag. Actually, he buys it directly from a farmer here and then he brings it home a big bag, and I'm so lucky that he shares it with me. So This bowl is going to get out of the way. And I've put flour on the counter, you can see. And I'm just going to knead it for just a minute or two. And I'm putting a little bit of flour. And the way you get your fingers all, see, they're all a mess. If you take the flour actually and rub it on your fingers, all of this stuff will come off your fingers. And it's okay just to knead it, right? Here, and this is what you call a bench scraper. It's a metal tool with usually a plastic or a wooden handle, and it helps clean your bench. Okay, it's a valuable tool. I love it so much. That tool, I've had it forever. um, and that's basically your dough. Okay, you want to make it into a ball. And often when you're making bread, they say put some oil in the bowl and then put oil on the top. But we don't need to do anything here, actually. We're just going to put it in the bowl and we're going to cover it. You can cover it with a piece of saran wrap if you want. I actually have a bag that I use for all bread dough that I just cover. Sometimes I just cover it with a towel, right? So I'm just gonna get a small bowl here. Here, I'm just gonna get a bowl and I'm just going to put this in here like this, like that. And you would cover it with a towel. And we've had no sun here in the last 2 days. Today, I hope my bread has risen. I haven't looked at it. I did it like an hour and a half ago. And you're just gonna cover it and let it rise for about 60 to 90 minutes. You want it to be doubled, okay? That's the goal. And you put it away. And we're going to put away some of this flour. We're definitely going to move this yeast. And we're going to start to get this pan hot. Now, what I recommend is you using a cast iron pan. You can use a ceramic pan if you want. Let me get the yeast, the bread that I made an hour and a half ago. Remember I said I have one bag? This bag gets used over and over and over again every time I make bread. It's just a gigantic kitchen bag, a reusable bag. And I literally just rinse it out each and every time. If I need to rinse it out, it's actually pretty clean. And I just fold it away and I put it away till my next bread time. And I can't tell you, I've probably used that thing 50 times, at least 50 times. So here is our risen ball. It's very, very risen. I want to just put it onto the surface with the flour on it because it's a little sticky, right? It's just a little sticky. And it's going to be up to you how many dough balls that you cut. If we were making this in a restaurant, I would want to weigh every single dough ball, but it's kind of, we're not in a restaurant, so I'm just going to rough them out. The bench scraper not only cleans your counter, but it also cuts your dough. Okay, so I'm going to cut it in half, and then I think we'll make 6 pieces. 6 pieces. I'm kind of just trying to make this so it looks somewhat even like that. And then I'm just going to cut 6 pieces like this. Okay, whether they're even, I don't really know. I haven't weighed them. And we're just going to make I'm just going to make a ball. And usually this ball is bigger than this, I can see already. I kind of do like making them somewhat even. But this is going to just sit here. You don't even have to make them balls right now, but I like just, and I immediately put a towel over this while I'm working. Okay, so let's just get a little towel, a floury towel, and I'm going to find one in here. I actually have several of these white towels that have no print on them, and they are my bread flour. They are what they call flour towels. And I'm just going to cover the dough. So it's nice to let it sit for 5 minutes. If we had 5 minutes, we would do that. But we have to start cooking the bread. And so that I have this on. This is starting to get hot. It's not quite hot yet, but it's starting to get hot. And I'm going to get a rolling pin. Now, if you don't own a rolling pin, how do you know? Use a bottle. Use a bottle of Calistoga water or a wine bottle. And so many things can be rolling pins. And we're going to make this naan so that it has some garlic. Remember, I told you I chopped a lot of garlic. You could chop up a green onion if you want. Earlier today, I sauteed in just water a bunch of onions, and just so that they were slightly cooked. When I made this recipe at the beginning of the week, I also used the pickled onions that I always have in the refrigerator. I used those as well. So ultimately, we want to have kind of a circle or an oblong piece. I think you can see this fine. We want to have plenty of flour. Don't be afraid of using the flour because you can. And you want to just roll it so that it's somewhat oblong, right? Somewhat and somewhat wide, okay? And you want to do this so that it's almost an eighth of an inch thick, okay? And it can be any shape. It can be any shape you want. Do you see? Now you could roll them all out at one time. I usually start to get them cooking, and I roll one while one is cooking. Okay. Now this is an opportunity for a very quick minute for us just to look at the burgers, because I know that they're not going to be fully done. But let's just look at them. And we're not going to be able to plate these things, but I just want to show you that we're going to flip them. Okay, we're going to flip them right now. They're getting nice and brown. You can see. You
They
see
look delicious.
they're not sticking whatsoever, okay? They're not sticking. I just want the other side to get as brown as this side, okay?
Gorgeous.
So those are going back in. So back to the naan, which is important. So this pan is now starting to smoke. It's very hot. There's no oil. Normally, if you were making normal naan, you would slather it with oil or slather it with ghee, but we're not doing that. But what I did learn was it's very helpful to have a surface that's wet. Now, at the beginning of the week when I was doing this, I was using just if you don't have a pastry brush, then just use your hands. And you're just going to wet this surface, okay? Just like that. Wet the surface. Why are you going to wet the surface? That's going to help the topping to stick, as well as it's going to give the naan a little bit of color. So what I'm going to do is take some of these onions, and I'm literally going to push them in to the bread. Just push them in like that. Okay, everyone can see that I'm just pushing it, and I have garlic already. Now you could use chopped cilantro. Like I said, you could chop a scallion. That's all up to you. Okay. And then what we want to do is we want to be able to quickly turn this, and we're putting the wet side down. And I want to bring this closer. Hopefully you can see. Everyone can see. And we're going to flip this, and we're going to put it in the pan. Oh boy, it just sizzled just really quickly. We're going to give it a very few minutes. While it's giving a few minutes, you're going to start to see that it's going to start having its own little air bubbles, little pockets. That means it's cooking. And in the meantime, I go to the next piece of dough. Okay, and I roll it. Again, you could do it all, the dough rolling ahead of time. That's all up to you how you do it. It is definitely, you don't want to make your, the other day I made one that was so big that I had it climbing up the sides. So I've kind of figured out like how big, it makes about 6 or 7. It's better to have it wider than too long that it won't fit in your pan, right? And the bubbles are definitely happening. And I've never done this on an electric burner, so we'll see how it's going. It is puffing up. It might need to be a little hotter. It might be too hot. Um, I'm a real gas stove cooker, so sometimes when we do things here and I'm not in front of the stove, let's just see what's happening. Okay, we're gonna take the spatula. It needs to flip over, and we're gonna flip it over, and it's looking good. You see,
Carole, it looks amazing.
it's really gonna be good.
Those
And then
onions,
we need
one
to
can just
toast.
imagine. Oh, sorry. One could just imagine the flavor of those onions with that bread.
Yeah, it's really good. And like I said, I use the pickled onions that I love, that I always have. And I did, I could do that right now while we're waiting, just to show everyone while it's cooking. I do like the gas stove a little better, I have to admit. But you could just take a scallion. This is a little overgrown from my yard, and you could do the same thing. These are not pre-cooked. I cooked the yellow onion. I cooked that ahead, but you don't really need to cook the green onion ahead. This will can go for stock, or we could use the tops, the green parts also. It's probably nice to make a combination of things. I the other day made like three different kinds. We should definitely get a plate out for this. Um, and I know it's almost time to go. We didn't get to make all of them, but let's just start to see where we are here. See, this is, and once you do one, the next ones get a lot easier actually. So this is what this looks like, but
Yeah.
let's just get this one. And I want to tell you that when I drained the chickpeas earlier for the Aloo Gobi burgers, I thought to myself, well, why don't we use just the bean water? And for the top, we already have chickpea flour. That will really super work, right? Why throw that out? And then we're putting these onions in, and we're just going to kind of get them in here like this. And then we're going to lift this up very carefully and flip it over. And that way the onions get all pushed in. It's starting to bubble. And then we're on to our next one. Okay. We're just, all these doughs are slowly, you might have to put more flour on your table, right? And just roll it out. That is really it. Wendy, we have to wrap up. I know you have a lot of announcements. We could talk. I don't think we're going to be able to plate everything. Everyone knows what the burgers are like and the chutney we have. And I just really wanted to be able to have enough time to show how to make these naan. And I feel like anybody has questions, now is the time to ask.
Um, the question is, hang on, we just got one as to, hold on, what kind of pan you're using for the naan.
Uh,
So,
yes.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I meant to say that because I knew someone would ask that. I said that you could use a cast iron pan. You could use your ceramic pan if you have. I'm using a Debuyer, Debuyer. It is carbon I can't remember the name of the pan, carbon something or another. I always forget, and somebody always writes in to remind me. Somebody always is there that knows this exact pan. I love this pan for doing this kind of thing. It's really good for making tortillas. It's really good for making um, uh, roasting anything. It's a great pan, and and it usually does need some kind of oil. This pan. For seasoning, just like a cast iron pan, you do have to take care of it, but this would work in any kind of pan. Now, I just want to show you what this bread looks like. Do you see? Both sides are brown, right? It's very hot. And I'm
Looks
just,
amazing.
uh,
Jesse said carbon steel pan.
yes,
And
carbon
what was the
steel.
name
Thank
of it?
goodness for Jessie. Thank goodness for Jessie.
She's been answering a lot of questions. It's great. Thank you, Jesse. You're welcome to answer them all the time.
But
Um,
people know out there, people know because not everyone is a cook, but there are people that just know these
right.
things.
What was the brand, Carol? And then we are going to have to wrap up. It's just about
The
6:30,
buyer,
and I just want to
DE,
wrap up.
it's Debuyer. And,
Okay.
and it's a great pan. I have it says Debuyer right here on the
Great.
thing. They're
Great.
usually made in France, actually.
Super. Okay, we are going to wrap up. Carol, do you want to play anything while I'm doing the
I
announcement?
could be like maybe making more of these at least while
Great.
you are, because I have, I'm gonna have to make more later, and I just would like to know that these are getting ready and they're
Great.
just getting made.
Rob, you can keep us both on. I do want to do a shout out to Rob Klein, who's behind the scenes and doing the tech for us today. Jim is had to take a road trip for work. So thank you, Rob, and just keep us
Thank
both
you, Rob.
while Carole is still working. So for those of you who came late, just a few announcements from Plant Powered Metro New York. Please do go to our website to check out these events. But in the next few days, I just want to highlight that there's a men's health series that we're doing on Saturdays. It's a 3-part series. We did 1 part last Saturday. There are 2 more parts to go. This upcoming Saturday, October 26th, it's from 11:30 till 1. And the topic is Better in the Bedroom, how food can improve sexual wellness. And we also have a cooking demo with that presentation. There'll be black bean burgers and tomato, cucumber, and basil salad, Snicker bites, which sound delicious, and cauliflower wings. And then November 2nd, the topic is gauging the pressure, how food can improve blood pressure. And that also will be with a cooking demo. And the men who are presenting are just charming. They're from our community. They're experienced. They've got knowledge. They've got research that they will be able to share. It's all evidence-based, and their personal stories as well. So please join us for that. And then that's all online. Please go to the website to register. And then in November, we have the legendary Dr. Michael Clapper, who's coming to New York. He's going to give a talk, which is one event, and then we're doing a joint fundraiser for Plant Powered Metro New York and for his organization, Moving Medicine Forward. And if you don't know the organization, please look that up online. Dr. Clapper is doing everything he possibly can to get this information into medical schools. Unfortunately, it's not in the medical school curriculum. However, there are student organizations that are organizing themselves around bringing Dr. Clapper and nutrition into the medical school environment. It's super important work, as you well know, for the next generation of doctors. And Plant Powered Metro New York is happy to have him here, happy to help him with his work. And of course, he has been a huge supporter of ours, and we're, yeah, it's a wonderful partnership. And so if those of you anywhere in the New York area, please come join us for that. And then we have other online classes and in-person events, potluck events that are coming up, a walk with the doctor coming up, a bunch of fitness stuff as well. So please join us for all the lifestyle education. Knowing your numbers is another class that's coming up. So, okay, enough on the announcements. I do want to thank, as already mentioned, Rob Klein for joining us today and handling a lot of the tech in the background. To reach Carole, you can reach her at Carole at thevegievanguard.com. For Plant Powered Metro New York, you can go to our organization, which is plantpoweredmetronewyork.org. And I am going to start just a tad early, but in November and December, we will be launching into our fundraising season. The funds that all of you or any of you donate go directly into our ability to not only have these kinds of programs, which are generally offered for free or for a minor donation, but it allows us to do the work that we do behind the scenes in communities. We have very active Food for Life programs that we're working with PCRM, but we're bringing them to a lot of the senior communities all over the boroughs of Manhattan. Carole, actually, when she lived here, did some for JASA, and we're also in the Bronx in some of the communities that have difficulty getting healthy food or healthy education. And so we are working with a number of the communities that you might be less aware of. And so your funds really help the entire mission of Plant Powered Metro. And we would encourage you, if you're able to make a generous donation to the organization. You'll probably hear me discuss this next week as well, and then at Christmas time. So bear with us as we really try to do some fundraising. So again, thank you to Jim, thank you to Rob, thank you to Alan Smithy for his contributions, and to the whole team behind Plant Powered Metro New York. And Carole, how are you doing with the bread?
I'm good. I just want to show you. I took these out so you
Gorgeous.
see. I broke a naan earlier, so I had to start biting into it. And
Great,
I put a little bit of chutney on top of it, which was really yummy. And I only have two more dough balls to roll out.
great.
And we're flipping and we're making, and that's the end of the show pretty much. And thank you for joining us. Thank you again to Rob Klein. Wendy, always thank you. I forgot to tell you that we're making one right now that just has garlic on it.
Oh,
Just
nice.
garlic.
Wow.
So that looks delicious, right? Um, and it's going to be, they taste out of this world yummy. So good luck, everyone. And thank you for coming. And we'll see you in November.
We'll see you all in November. Next show is Sunday, November 10th. Same time, same channel.
Thank
Thank
you so
you,
much,
everybody.
everyone, for coming. I saw we had some people from Canada today. And thank you for coming from, we always thank all the people that come regularly. And thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Look forward to seeing you next month. Take good care. Stay healthy. Bye bye.